My family just moved into a new house. We found a strange set of rules to follow. Part 2. Submitted by Luckyslin. They say whatever you dream in your first night at a new place will come true. I didn't dream anything, or at least I don't remember. It was a tight, relaxing sleep. I woke up at around 9 a.m., decided it had no purpose to try falling asleep again, so I went downstairs. It was long after dawn, so I would unlock the basement door. Then I suddenly realized, what if I kept it locked all the time? Wouldn't that be easier? The rules said nothing about it, but I also didn't want to gamble. I unlocked the door and went into the kitchen to have breakfast, but I couldn't eat much. Eventually, my thoughts drifted away. What if I was not at home to lock the door someday? What if I broke a rule? What if one of my family members broke a rule? How long will we live here? Will I have to take care of everyone living here forever? Was it all really just a prank and I was going insane about it? It was Mom who ended my thinking. She came in through the front door, placed her keys and some bags of groceries on the table and told me to help her carry in the rest. I quickly put on my shoes and helped her. She handed me a big bag filled with ice cream, frozen fillets, peas and some other stuff. "There's a large freezer in the basement, can you put it there?" she said. Her words sent chills down my spine. I didn't want to go into the basement, but if I told her why, she'd probably drag me to see a therapist. "Sure, no problem," I replied, grabbed the bag and went into the basement. It was dark, some bulbs were broken, and the stairs creaked. I didn't want to spend more time than necessary down here. I didn't even know why the door should be locked at night. The freezer in the corner of the room seemed pretty old. We don't have one like that, so I expected the pre-owners had left it here. I opened it and stood in shock for what felt like minutes. The freezer was filled with parts of human bodies, definitely, from more than one person, cut off with what seemed like a saw and wrapped in plastic. I could see legs, arms and even an eyeball. The parts were laying on a grid. Beneath it was a pool mixed of blood and water. The smell was horrible, stinging in my nose. Just as I stood there, my mind trying to process what I was seeing, the eyeball moved. It actually moved, now looking right at me, dead into my eyes. It even blinked at me, watching me with interest, awaiting my next action. My hands were so in shock that I dropped the bag. I felt a cold, icy wind blowing around me. I was in the basement. How was this possible? It was almost like I could hear someone whisper in the breeze. Eventually, I turned around and ran up the stairs. I stumbled twice, but I could keep myself going. As I was finally back in the foyer, I threw up on the ground, tears running down my face. Mom saw me and came up to me. "Dear, are you alright? What happened?" I didn't know it either. I still couldn't comprehend what I had just seen. I managed to point at the door with my index finger. My whole arm was shaking. Mom turned around. I heard her go down the stairs, open the freezer and scream. She was screaming in shock. She quickly went upstairs. By her look, I could tell she was equally freaked out as me. Mom called the police, then we waited. The two responding officers wanted us to show them what we found in the freezer. They seemed unnaturally calm for what we had just told them. When we opened the freezer, one officer held a cloth before his nose. The other, older one, didn't seem to care. He told us there had been an incident in this house some years ago. What we found in the freezer simply were evidences they had forgotten to collect. Forgotten? How can you forget a freezer full of parts of human bodies? However, the officers told us they'd send someone to get them, then left shortly after, so we were home alone again with a freezer full of bodies. Dad was at our old home, doing some paperwork and getting the remaining boxes of our stuff. My sister was at the mall. She had already made friends in this town. I spent some hours in my room, streaming shows and texting with Zoe. I could tell she was worried and so was I. I couldn't stop thinking about the things I had seen in the freezer. The older officer said there had been an incident at our house. What did that mean? I simply Googled our address and instantly found some newspaper articles. Apparently, a murderer used to live in this house. He would kidnap his victims, then slowly kill them in the basement and also eat them. I nearly threw up again while reading the article. I had to get a clear mind, put on my shoes and a hoodie and headed outside for a walk. The air was fresh, and I could feel it clean my mind. For a brief moment, I felt relieved, my head finally empty. But it didn't last long, just until I reached the end of the street and realized I had to go back into the psycho killer cannibal house. Now I had no doubts anymore. The list of rules wasn't a prank. It was a guide to surviving whatever was haunting this house. Back at home, I saw Mom arguing with Dad. They were yelling at each other. The topic obviously was the freezer in the basement, and the house Dad had bought. How could you let your family move to such a terrifying place? Mom yelled. Dad was about to answer when he recognized me coming in. Hey Adam, where have you been? Outside, I replied. Then I asked him, will you lock the basement door now? I could tell he was confused. What do you mean, why should I? I'm sure the list was there for a reason. I interrupted him. Mom and me looked at Dad now. You're crazy, I didn't think you'd fall for such a weak prank, Dad said. A prank? Come on, you know it's not a prank. Mom shouted at him. They began arguing again while I headed up to my room. I knew it was no prank. I had seen the eyeball stare at me with its pale, waiting look. As I arrived in my room, I noticed the mirror wasn't there. He wasn't in my room, he had been moved. It wasn't me, I knew the rules, it had to be one of my parents. I ran down the stairs, bumping into my still arguing parents, interrupted them with a cracking, have you moved the mirror in my room? They looked at me, irritated. Mom began to speak calmly. Yes dear, I took it in the garage because I thought you wouldn't. Why I didn't hear the last part. I hurried to the garage, I had to get the mirror. Shit. Rule 6, the mirror must not be moved under any circumstances. I was totally freaked out, looking for the mirror in the garage, throwing boxes around and dropping Dad's tools all over the place. It wasn't there. Just as I went outside the garage again, heading for the main door of the house, I saw something that would cause my stomach to hurt. I realized the sun was setting.